Today I'm going to be talking about Shabbat, but before that, or Sabbath, but before that I will be sharing some haikus I wrote in 2007, 2008. I will say the title. Now, I'm not guaranteeing they're all 575. It was my intention, but I can't guarantee that I did accomplish it or that I wasn't being a little rebellious and saying, no, I want to do it this way at that time. But I will say that I like them. So, orchestration. A few roam the earth, absolutely certain that we're experiments. Army. A need to be brave. A need to be brave. Clean, young, square, shiny faces. Forced to age too fast. Haiku, 5, 7, and 5. Eliminate any extra words. Compact expression. Gorilla. Territorial. Beast of black, leathery hands and empowerment. Anne Frank. Amsterdamatic. Amsterdam attic. One word. Amsterdamatic. Bucket of urine and poop. Diary gone wild. Kitty litter. It's dumpster romance. All you can see are their tails. Meowing cats. Sexing. Marketplace. Cheese, olives, and dates. Tickled taste buds sigh gladly. Oh, sampling treats. Fishy. So as you can tell, I'm reading the title, then I'm just reading the poem straight. Gurgling, fishy, gurgling with joy. Now unblinkingly flopping on a wooden slab. Rumor, flying with a verve. A backbend in my small mind. Shit, inhalation. Jealousy, green pouncing rodent. Impulsed, dissatisfaction, fed with ugliness. Stolen, malnourished potbelly, emaciated backbone, an apple in hand. She looks, maple syrup skin, sturdy abdomen heaving, her head on backwards. Forest fire, hot dragon, breath fumes, smoking fury, ashen trees. Sometimes I'm just counting and they're right. Waiting for the storm. So I'll read that one again. Forest fire, hot dragon, breath fumes, smoking fury, ashen trees, waiting for the storm. Midnight swim, delightful flowing, strokes in water, stroking me, a dark weightlessness. Question, it's seeing a killer in an ordinary man, reminder of death. Wow, that's so deep. Question, it's seeing a killer in an ordinary man, reminder of death. Claustrophobia, mashed into a corner, walls are rapidly shrinking, heart stuck in my throat. Sunset, gone in a moment, horizon of gold colors, the rays lick the dust. Flatulence. Bubbles of sickness, slapstick, gas of merriment, possible skid marks. Beach, salty, sandy hair, soft skin smelling of sunscreen, squeaking wet flip-flops. Technology, divide and conquer, it is using us as well. Proliferation. And I'm going to talk about Shabbat. Arizal in the Emanations of Evil says 10, not 9, and not 11. 11 is not a good number, especially. This is about observing, and people forget what observant means. That's what I'm talking about here, really. Shabbat is about observing. This is the angle of Shabbat. Da'as, which is knowledge, is the central 11th column, bringing with 7 chakras and the 10 sphirot, so 10 spheres, and 7 chakras, plus Das is 18 instead of 11. We have 10 spheres and Das, and then we have 7 chakras. 11th is Pluto, creative and destructive. The snake is Nachash, and Mashiach is the same, and Choshen, which is the breastplate, the guard of the heart. And the Nachash is the snake, and Mashiach is the anointed or destructive, and it's 358. And that's the same gematria The 11th sphera is this powerful negatively, it negates. So plus 7 becomes 8 and 10, and the 8 is related to kesher, which is above nature, which is related to ketoras, which is incense, connection. Incense had 10 spices in it, and it's about positively creating. We say like in Torah, Tahara, we have this Israel, we have this like Ra energy, which is called bad in Hebrew. So it's like this energy which is not bad. It's creative or destructive when it's Torah, Tahara, Israel. The land itself destroyed its inhabitants when they didn't follow the Torah. So, yeah, Israel. So Chaya is the energy, one of the elements of our soul, which is life. Life, one big life blob, and all of us are part of it in separate fleshy blobby bodies. And there's bones to hold us up, and some creatures, bugs, they have the bones on the outside to hold the blob in. And Chaya is this life surrounding. It requires us to be conceptualizing this from inside the container of God, rather than getting trapped in any one vessel. So even though Shabbat is obviously also about sitting, and I'm going to go into more details besides for just the word observant, but I'm going to say, because Sheves is sitting. There's also a month, Shevet. That also means tribe. So when we go into this life, which encompasses all, you would say meditation about sitting, right? Like we're going to have a sit session. We're going to do a sit together. It's to meditate together. So it's about meditation. Now, this meditation is from being inside of a container. Chaya surrounds the whole container. It's the life that's included in the vessel itself that shapeshifts to this contents. And like I said, the blob, and we're all part of this life blob. And Chaya, you have like neshama, ruach, nefesh. Nefesh is the most crude. Then you have nefesh, ruach is like the spirit, more ethereal. And then you have neshama, which is like a spark, like a light, which is not even yet like a smokiness to it. And then you have a higher level, which is Chaya. And this is like the life, all life. And then you have Chida, which is the oneness, which is, life that doesn't have this eternal lifetime, but it's before the concepts. So we couldn't even talk about it. So here, talking about Chaya, surrounding, we would say, let's say Halloween is supposed to be hallowed, right? Halloween. We would say Shabbat, hallow means to make holy, hallowing. It means it's emptying out, it's clearing out the shell of the blob, and then the blob space that it was taking up could be seen, right? So you have to seize, you have to stop. C-E-A-S-E, not seize like grab. Seize like being empty, learning the grooves of the innermost edges. And I'd even say here, like, lahavdil means a separation from what I said about Halloween and Shabbat. Because the whole point is that what happened to Halloween is that it became about witches and ghouls and monstrous things. And then the idea of also this Indian power god element, in Hebrew we say it's all one, Elohim, all the powers that are of the weather, of nature, of, a tornado, which is so destructive we can't even fathom putting all that energy into some system. But we're systems, right? So it depends on our contents of, the compilation of the system. So once a year, lahavdil, they have Halloween is like our weekly Sabbath, because we probably got more refined at not letting in those dark, deathly energies. But then there's also the power god is Shiva, which is so similar, right, to Shiva, which is sitting, or Shavua, which is oath, or Shavua, which is week, 7 days, right? Shabbos is the favorite day. So people want to know what's behind the curtain. And that consumes us, right? So the creativity has its own demons to look and be looked through, to be looked at. And again, not to say that 8 is higher than the Sabbath. Like I said, 8, right? And then 7 here, Sabbath is 7. But that it can't be hallowed because it's not a vessel with the quality to be a favorite day. It's not a container of light like the day holds the sunshine. Even when it's cloudy, like a cup, while 8 is infinity. So it's the womb, it's the light, it's multiplying life chain going on. And like Zara, which is the descendant, the womb, it means like the taking that energy and wrapping it up into a film, a separation, like a skin, like a cell, making it a cell, right? Once it's a cell, now it could be hollowed out, but 8 cannot be hollowed out because it's not a cell. It's not wrapped up with a skin of a blob. The blob has no skin. So this womb is the light multiplying life chain going on. So it's like the Zara, the descendant, the womb is the leftovers. It's kind of like a derivative of the power, referred to, like El, like I said, Elohim. So Avodah Zarah is the work of Zara, like stranger or descendant or womb. It's like, it's a derivative, it's a piece, it's a remnant, it's a shell. So now the energy that could be contained in this film, you now take everything out of it, but there's just the film, and now you serve the film. You serve what it was wrapped in. And this is like why we say womb, because God is like wrapping itself into babies that are being born. And so to be a host, so it's not the power source. In other words, the Avodah Zarah is saying that this is you're serving the host. But why is it so terrible to serve a host? Is because it's not the power source. It's inefficient to do work that doesn't tap into the highest output or the nexus. A lot of Jewish women call it the nexus, where light meets vessel. So why can't we go to the higher charges? We have to refine the vessel, right? So we have to be emptied out to get that highest charge. We have to have a Sabbath. We have to have a seizing, a stopping, a hallowing, getting to know the grooves. Why? Because we're vessels. So to be a host, eternally bonded with the origin of the hosts, is to be hosting only the original, never the shadow. So, or the inverse. I know that according to Kabbalah, keter gives, and through 10 filters, apertures, reaches malchut. So you have keter, right, chachma, bina, and then this extra one I talked about, das, and then we have the chesed, we have the gevura, we have tiferet, yesod, netzach, hod. You can't see where I'm pointing. Malchut. You can always look up a chart on the internet, but it corresponds with the supernal body because we're wrapped up in a skin. And so these 10 filters that make it into like something that could be received. Actually, what happens is malchut accepts it. It reveals itself as a keter, so it turns inside out. So it's like it receives and receives and receives, and then it opens itself up. That film opens, and inside is a keter that could give. And it's like going through a metamorphosis. And it's accepting malchut, so now there's its own self. It goes and taps in and taps in and taps in to this 10 filters. Later, subsequently, this one goes on to birth itself into a new world. This is the idea of a woman who was birthed in her body. She is going to reveal the egg inside of her, is going to come out and have a new world, which is going to reveal the egg inside of her. So we could say that's why we relate to this womb idea as woman being this host. And it's like we all are, in a way, hosts for something that is at the origin of the host. So what energy are we hosting? Shabbos gives us that clearing out. And so every keter has a malchut at some point prior, then becoming its own beacon. So before it was a lighthouse, somebody came with a bulb that was from a bigger lighthouse that could give a little light to this lighthouse. This lighthouse that eventually became a big one, and then that one is able to spawn a new, smaller lighthouse, like, not literally lighthouses like having babies, but this idea of the beacons, like shining. Just a second. Excuse me. So what do I mean by a beacon shining is because forever based on the light and exposure of its previous keter, giver, such that what it accepted is what it has to give. So the reason I'm harping on this is because it accepted, it was open to receiving, it hallowed itself out, it got more blessings to receive, more light, more everything. Not always does it feel good, but more of everything. And then it had more to give to itself. Its version of itself that it was going to birth into a film, into a shell, into a skin. So it's giving its future self by receiving more. And that's what a woman does. She eats more while she's breastfeeding or while she's pregnant, usually. So the zero is like the malchut. The missing one, keter, is like what it could, it's so it can take the keter. So it's like this one becomes a zero. This zero opens itself up and becomes a one. And then it turns into the one that turned it into a zero. It came from a one, and then the one gave its own zero. The one turned itself into zero so that it could give itself. And then this zero is receiving in itself what the one has to give. So it wants to take this one so that when it becomes a one, it could give its own zero. So it's also the story of the masculine. So the idea is that the man has a piece of himself that he turns into a zero. It's like a man would treat a woman like it would be his daughter. That he would say, I could have birthed you, and now I'm having sex with you, but it's all done in such a way that you could have been from me. I give you my portion. I give you like your meat. I take you from your father, and I become your father too. So the 0 is like the malchut, the missing one, the keter, so that the keter is the light. It can take this keter, and it's only able to receive what it could. So the man here is setting up from his 1 that the 0 could only receive what it could, and the 1 it takes is different than the 1 of another. So when you say soulmates, you would say, well, it's not being done with mother and father, it's being done with man and woman who met each other, like I just mentioned with the man, right, becoming the father of the woman. He has to be able to say, I could birth her, I would treat her like she's my own, with love, with respect, with like my portion of all of these things. And so it's also like the 1 was a 0. The 0 is the absence of, like a Shabbos, like a vow. We say, I'm not going to do that anymore. Or I'm going to do it means I'm not going to do something else. So we commit to something, we're saying, at all other costs. So 1 has both the existent and non-existent property living in it at all times. So the 1 it takes is different than the 1 of another, because this potential 1, so the 1 is turning itself into a 0 so that it could give. And then this 0 that is receiving from this 1 cannot receive from another 1. So it's as if it turns itself into a separation to be out there. That 0 walking around originally came from this 1, even though physically in the physical world didn't have this 1 as a father. So this 1 is able to give to itself, to its 0 aspect. The 0 aspect can then become a 1 when it gives to the child, when it gives to this child as a host, which can now be, it hollows itself out to receive what this 1 has to give it, and it receives this for the sake of the future. So this role here is both of them sacrificing. To be the woman is to be able to sacrifice at all other costs. It's to vow, is to commit. That's why a woman relates to the receiver and the man as a penetrator. The signal of the 0 in potential is what its 1 would be if it was and wasn't, isn't-ing. What do I mean? I mean, for something not to exist means it could have existed and it isn't existing. So even though this 0 is walking around as a 0, it has a version of itself that's a 1. This 0 came from a 1. So there's a 1 in it that it will match up. And it's this potential self. It's this, not self, it's a potential other even, because it will be recognized as itself. So, but yet it's not existing, so it isn't-ing. It's in the process of isn't existing, so it's isn't-ing. So for something not to exist means it could have existed and it isn't existing. It's called isn't-ing. And so this 1 has the existent and non-existent property living in it at all times, means it is a 0 and a 1 while it's a 1. And then eventually when it becomes a 0 and separates from itself and it receives itself, the reason it will know itself is because it's isn't-ing what this 1 is-ing. So this 1 is, and this 0 isn't. And their is and isn't match. So that's why the woman, or the signal of the 0 in potential is what its 1 would be if it was and wasn't, isn't-ing. So if this 1 would become a 0, it would be that 1. So it knows. We're naturally protected. Not that if its 1 would become a 0, it would only be that 1. But that 0, that 1, knows that that's its isn't-ing in potential. If it wasn't, if there was space for itself in another, it would be that 0. If that 1 could be the inside out of itself, and if a 0 would become a 1, it would be that. So we're naturally protected when a woman honors that inner 1 that lives in her, even while she isn't-ing and she's a 0. Not a 0 like a nothing, a 0 the way exactly I explained. And that will always match women to the right keter sources, their right channel of matching up as an opening to the light, which is the 1. We are naturally protected when men honor that inner 0 that will always match men to the right malchut openings. The 1 that they will give as much as could be received for the sake of the future 1. When the 1 and 0 come together and then they birth itself. Right, so that's what I'd like to share. I hope that was interesting and that you will join me for the next video, hopefully tomorrow. I hope to do another landing pad for calmness with many, let me see if I have even a whole week here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. yes, I should have a week, and I hope that it's a nice check-in point since last week. We'll see, like, if anybody's been keeping up doing any of these prompts, you'll see if these prompts themselves, today I'll make room for myself to have some calm. If you find that it's actually helpful, then you can check in and see if you want to save them up and then read them like a week later and see if you can see a theme in the week of any type of growth. That's what I'm doing, and it's helpful. So thank you for your time. Bye.